Hey everybody, it is December 21st, 2020, and this is the day of the great Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. I want to talk a little bit about it and what it means and what I feel that it means for all of us. I remember many years ago, I don't know if it was the late 80s or the early 90s, there was something called the harmonic convergence. And somebody had said to me, Marianne, are you going to do a service for the harmonic convergence? And I thought, well, it couldn't hurt. I mean, I was pretty neutral about it. But that day, the energy really did shift. There was no doubt about it. And for those of us who are sensitive to things like solstices, etc., and anyone who is interested in astronomy as well as astrology is very, very interested in what's happening in the sky tonight, the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, something that has not happened for 800 years, followed last time by the apex of the Renaissance and so forth. But I want to talk about, in general, the significance of astrology right now. Hundreds of years ago, the great thinkers who were interested in astronomy were also interested in astrology. That includes, by the way, the founders of the United States, people like Benjamin Franklin, who was a Rosicrucian. In those days, this was considered part of the gentleman's arts. As a matter of fact, the United States, our birthday, July 4th, is under the sign of Cancer. And when the Constitution was first written, the inauguration of the president was to be March 4th. And then, of course, the election day, which is the first Monday after the first Tuesday of November, is always in Scorpio. They did that in order to form a perfect trine. So to people in those days, this was not considered some fringe, silly thing. You might look, of course, on the Great Seal of the United States on your dollar bill. You'll see that there's the Great Pyramid with the Eye of Horus and Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages. Speaking of the March 4th inauguration, Franklin Roosevelt, who apparently was not into astrology, said, well, we don't need as long after the election before the inauguration. And right now, I think we're all fine with that. He said that was fine on horse and buggy days, and that's when it was changed to January 20th. So the inauguration of the president ever since then has not quite been in sync with the birthday of the United States the way it was before. You know, modern psychology was only devised in the late 1800s. And this is an area where the modern Western mind is so arrogant. Before there was psychology, there was an understanding that there was an inner life. It's not like all of a sudden people got that. You know, if you go into a museum and you see a piece of statuary that was created hundreds of years ago or even thousands of years ago, you don't assume there was less genius there. Even when it comes to technology, if you go to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, the technology with which those things were built, when you're at the Great Pyramids and they explain why the whole thing is held together, they say, we don't even have the engineering know-it-all today to be able to replicate that. So it's not like just because something's old, it's less wise. Astrology was psychology before there was psychology. And there are a lot of people who would say, well, the psychological wisdom I've gotten studying that has been at least as great as any other aspect of psychology, Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, or anything else. When it comes to the inner life, we talk like we're more enlightened. We are actually a less enlightened age than many that have already occurred on this planet. So the idea of astrological influences, deep astrological influences, carrying archetypal significance, even the idea, well, how could something in the sky affect you? We know, for instance, that the tides of the oceans reflect the movements of the moon. We know this. We know how women's menstrual periods are affected by tides of the moon. For that matter, we know how women's menstrual periods are affected by being together with other women a lot. So the idea, if the moon can have an effect on the tides of the ocean, why wouldn't a far-off planet, once again, that's where the moon is, way out there, have an effect on the psychology or the movement of brain chemistry and so forth? I don't think that people hundreds of years ago, or even thousands of years ago, who looked at the stars and thought about astrology and astronomy were less sophisticated than we are. And I think that in many ways, when you read the great astrologers, and we have some great astrologers right now, these people are not less sophisticated, certainly not less sophisticated in their psychological orientation. This please forgive me for not remembering her last name, a woman named Pam or Pamela, a blonde lady from Britain. Of course, we know all the people in the United States. And also everybody's been talking recently about Channing Nicholas, and I want to do a quote specifically from her that I thought, whoa. I was reading her material about today, about the Great Conjunction, and this sentence, wow, really blew me away because I feel that this is so true for me. She says, "We must face our fears of exile in order to access the wisdom of the healer, teacher, sage, witch that lives on the outskirts of the village." Boy, was that my story. Because, you know, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to have bestsellers, and I kind of learned what the game is, and now I know what it is to play it safe, and I could be doing really well within certain circles, but you have to face your fears of exile. I knew that if I really spoke with the wisdom of the teacher, I knew that if I really spoke with the wisdom of the sage, if I really spoke with the wisdom of the healer, that I would be called a witch. And indeed I have been. With all the political stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous today how much projection onto feminine understanding, the wise woman understanding, the healer understanding, the sage understanding is projected onto. No differently than if it was hundreds of years ago, she's a witch, she's a witch. That's relevant today because theoretically a lot of that changes now. As we now move, this conjunction and this solstice takes us into a new era. An era that is ruled by Aquarius in ways that others were ruled by Capricorn. Capricorn, they're all great. You know, there's no good or bad in astrology. There's just the positive side of it, the evolved side of it, the enlightened side of it, and the primitive. Capricorn has to do with building things, material structure. And boy, we have certainly built material structures. But you know, there was the first Joint Chiefs of Staff, the first chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, named Omar Bradley, General Omar Bradley. I remember my father talking about him in 1948. He said, "We are technological geniuses and ethical infants." No, he said we are technological giants and ethical infants. Aquarius takes us into an entirely new structure. Capricorn, the foundations of Capricorn, of dense material reality, so many of our political structures, so many of our economic structures, so many of our geopolitical arrangements based in dense material reality are already going through a lot of stress, obviously. They will be continuing to be dismantled. That's the energy of this coming age. We must work to make sure that that death of one era is gentle. This is a historic phase transition now. So one world is dying, another is emerging. And this new world is the wisdom of Aquarius, much more philosophical, much more mental, and much more of a time where that which is ideational, that which is spiritual, that which is of the mind and the air will be given as much credence as that which is of the earth and the dense material reality. The fracture between the two has caused great harm to the human race. We must put them together again. So this is like a battery charge today. We're given an opportunity to own who we really are. And I can also tell you, don't fear the exile. It's not so bad, you know, because you're exiled by certain establishment forces who think you're just a crazy lady on the outskirts of town. What you really understand is that the sage and the healer and the teacher who lives on the proverbial archetypal outskirts of town, those are the voices we need now. Be proud of it. Be proud of it. Own it. Own it. Because that is the age now being born. So, with all this, I hope we'll be together a lot. My daughter was talking to me the other day. She lives in London. I was saying to her about how new strain, coronavirus, everybody's talking about England. She said, yes. She used a term that I had not heard before, but apparently as they use it. She said, yes, we're building our support bubbles. I hope that you find in my work that there's a support bubble for you. Remember that on the 27th, 2 days after Christmas, I'll be doing a service. We'll just all get together like we're doing now. We'll actually go through kind of spiritual cleansing, purification. The Course in Miracles says miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. We need to be purified of all the toxic energies that certainly did accumulate this year and that we want to clear so that we have an open slate for next year. There's no reason to think next year is not going to be dramatic. It was really, really, really tough times this year. A lot will be better. We know some things that we know will be better, but I don't think that the great drama of this phase transition is going to be gone next year. We'll be in the thick of it. So in order to go high, we also have to ground ourselves and go very deep inside ourselves. One of the things we'll be doing for that, for those of you who are interested, is I'll be doing the Course in Miracles with you every single day, if that's what you would like. And other things. So this particular support bubble, I know you have a lot of them, and I hope they're all wonderful for you. And for right now, let's all rejoice as we now let go a phase of human history and open our hearts to embrace, to give welcome, and to rejoice about a phase now being born. And we surrender all that we have and all that we are, that we ourselves might be of greatest use and of greatest service to the forces of love and light and enlightenment being born right now. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen. Have a great, great holiday season. I'm so grateful for everything that so many of you have been to me this year and for me, and I so look forward to walking more of this journey with you.